You are 15 years old, standing barefoot on cold marble floors in the palace of Fontainebleau in the year 1453 AD. The scent of rosewater and frankincense cannot mask the underlying smell of fear that clings to these gilded walls like morning mist. Your silk gown, worth more than your father's entire estate, feels like a shroud against your trembling skin. Through arched windows, you glimpse manicured gardens where peacocks strut in the dying light, their jeweled feathers catching the last rays of sunset. But you are not here to admire beauty. The other girls stand in perfect silence beside you, their faces painted white as porcelain dolls, lips stained crimson with crushed berries. Some are barely 13. Others have been here so long their original names have become whispers, replaced by pet names their royal master prefers: Moonbeam, Songbird, Rose. You watch their hollow eyes and understand with crystalline terror that you are seeing your own future reflected back. A door opens somewhere in the shadows, and the sound of approaching footsteps sends shivers down your spine. Tonight, one of you will be chosen. Tonight, one of you will disappear behind doors that have swallowed countless girls before. The courtiers call this privilege, the nobility call it honor, but standing here in your golden cage, feeling the weight of invisible chains settling around your wrists, you begin to understand the truth that no one dares speak aloud. What looks like privilege was actually a sentence, and in medieval Europe, being chosen as a royal concubine wasn't the fairy tale ending you were promised. It was the beginning of a nightmare disguised as paradise, where survival meant silence, and silence meant becoming someone else entirely. Before we dive deeper into these forgotten stories of survival behind palace walls, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more hidden histories like this. It's incredible how we're connected across centuries by these stories of human resilience, learning together about truths that were once buried in royal archives. The recruitment always began the same way. You are 12 years old, playing with wooden dolls in your father's modest manor house. When riders approach, bearing the royal seal, your parents' faces transform from curiosity to calculated excitement as they read the parchment. You have been chosen, selected, honored, with an invitation to serve at court. But this isn't coincidence. Royal agents have been watching you for months, cataloging your features, your bloodline, your family's debts. They know your father owes 300 florins to Venetian merchants. They know your mother dreams of noble connections that might save your brothers from peasant obscurity. And they know you possess that precise combination of beauty, youth, and vulnerability that makes you perfect for their purposes. Margaret Beaufort was 12 when she was married for political advantage. Isabella of France was barely 13 when she became Queen of England, but concubines were chosen even younger, their childhoods ending the moment those royal messengers knocked on their doors. You were considered ready for courtly life the moment your body showed the first signs of womanhood, regardless of whether your mind could comprehend what awaited. The transaction happens quickly. Your father receives a purse of gold coins and promises of future favor. Your mother is assured you'll receive the finest education, eat at the king's table, wear silks from the Orient. They embrace you with tears of joy, believing they've secured your fortune. You climb into the ornate carriage, clutching a small wooden cross your grandmother pressed into your palm, watching your childhood home shrink to a dot on the horizon. The other girls in the carriage don't speak. They've learned that words are dangerous, that stories about home only make the ache worse. But their eyes tell you everything. Marie was 13 when she was taken from Normandy. Catherine was 14, promised to a convent but rerouted when someone noticed her unusual beauty. Elena was 12, sold by parents who couldn't afford another mouth to feed. You are property now, though no one uses such crude language. You are an investment, a diplomatic tool, a living ornament for a king's collection. The carriage rocks through muddy roads toward the palace, each mile carrying you further from everything you knew, everything you were. But entering the palace didn't mean security, it meant ownership. And ownership, you were about to discover, required the complete destruction of the person you used to be. The first thing they take is your name. You stand in a chamber lined with mirrors, watching servants methodically burn everything you brought from home. Your simple wool dress curls into ash. The wooden cross from your grandmother disappears into orange flames. Even your undergarments must be destroyed, contaminated as they are with memories of your former life. A stern woman with calculating eyes circles you like a hunter examining prey. She speaks in rapid French, a language you barely understand, while assistants take notes on parchment. They measure your waist, your height, the circumference of your skull. They examine your teeth like your livestock at market, pry open your mouth to check for rot, run fingers through your hair to assess its thickness and color. Your new name is written on a tablet, Celeste. It means heavenly, they explain in broken English. though their smiles suggest this heaven you've entered has more in common with purgatory. You are forbidden from speaking your birth name aloud. Letters to your family must be approved by censors, and after the first few months, they explain with feigned sympathy that correspondence is no longer permitted. Too distracting, too emotional, bad for your development into the refined creature they're crafting. The other girls help strip away the last pieces of your identity. They speak a mixture of languages, French, Italian, German, bits of English, creating a musical babble that sounds like prayers but carries the weight of survival lessons. Marie teaches you which goblet to use for wine, which fork for meat. Catherine shows you how to walk without making sound on marble floors, how to arrange your skirts when sitting so the king notices your ankles but not your trembling hands. They give you books written in languages you don't recognize, expecting you to become fluent within months. Poetry about courtly love, philosophy about feminine virtue, religious texts about obedience and submission. The library becomes your classroom and your prison, filled with beautiful lies about romance and duty. Your reflection in the mirror begins to change. They pluck your eyebrows into thin arcs. They bleach your skin with concoctions that burn like liquid fire. They teach you to paint your face each morning, transforming your natural features into a porcelain mask that pleases the royal aesthetic. Soon, you don't recognize the girl staring back at you. At night, you lie in silk sheets that smell of foreign spices, trying to remember your mother's lullabies. But the melodies fade like morning dreams, replaced by the whispered instructions of survival. How to please, how to submit, how to become invisible when anger fills the royal chambers. Your past becomes mythology, stories you're not even sure are real anymore. Did you once have a sister who braided flowers in your hair? Was there really a dog named Bruno who slept at your feet? The memories blur and fade, deliberately erased by a system designed to create perfect, compliant ornaments. And once you lost your past, they began reshaping your body. Your day begins before sunrise in a chamber that reeks of vinegar and rose oil. The transformation of your body is methodical, scientific, ruthless. You stand naked while servants examine every inch of your skin, searching for blemishes that must be corrected, imperfections that might displease royal eyes. They apply paste made from ground pearls and mercury to lighten any freckles, ignoring the way it burns your flesh like acid. Beauty, they remind you, requires sacrifice. The corset comes next, laced so tightly you can barely breathe. Your ribs compress until they creak, your waist cinched to an impossible narrowness that makes you dizzy with each shallow breath. This is fashion, they explain, as you struggle not to faint. This is what men desire. Your natural shape is wrong, requires correction, must be molded into something more pleasing. Walking lessons consume hours each day. You practice gliding across polished floors with books balanced on your head, learning to move like floating silk rather than a mortal girl. Your steps must be perfectly measured, your posture ramrod straight, your hands positioned just so to display their delicate bones. The instructors use wooden rods to correct your positioning. Sharp raps across your knuckles when your fingers curl incorrectly. Swift strikes to your spine when you slouch. Dance masters teach you intricate choreography designed to showcase your body's most attractive features. The pavane displays your graceful neck. The galliard reveals the elegance of your ankles. The volta requires your partner to lift you, offering brief glimpses of your legs that should seem accidental, but are actually carefully calculated to inflame desire. They feed you specific foods designed to enhance your appeal. Honey and rose petals to sweeten your breath, raw eggs and cream to soften your skin, wine mixed with herbs that supposedly increase fertility, though the concoction often leaves you nauseated and weak. When you grow too thin, they force you to consume butter and sugar until your curves return. When you gain too much weight, they restrict your food until you're lightheaded with hunger. Musical instruction fills your afternoons. You learn to play the lute with fingers that bleed from constant practice, to sing songs of unrequited love in languages you barely understand. Your voice must be pitched perfectly, melodic but not overpowering, sweet but not childish. Hours of repetition until your throat is raw, until the melodies invade your dreams. The most insidious training involves your expressions. Mirrors line the walls as you practice looking, adoring, submissive, mysteriously alluring. You learn to control every muscle in your face, to convey interest without appearing eager, desire without seeming wanton, intelligence without threatening masculine superiority. Your features become a mask you wear constantly, your genuine emotions buried beneath layers of calculated performance. Bathing rituals consume entire evenings. Servants scrub your skin with brushes until it's pink and tender. Oil your hair with exotic perfumes. Massage your hands and feet until they're soft as silk. Every part of your body must be perfect, maintained like a work of art, ready for inspection at a moment's notice. Pain becomes your constant companion, disguised as refinement. Your feet bleed in delicate slippers designed for beauty rather than comfort. Your scalp aches from elaborate hairstyles that require pins and wire to maintain. Your stomach cramps from tight lacing and irregular meals. But you learn to smile through the agony, to make suffering look like grace. But even perfect obedience couldn't protect you from the true test. You learn to read the king's moods from the sound of his footsteps echoing down marble corridors. Heavy, deliberate steps mean he's angry about taxes or rebellious nobles, and you must become invisible, melting into tapestries like a shadow until his rage passes. Quick, sharp steps suggest excitement about a successful hunt or military victory, and you should appear radiant but not presumptuous, celebrating his triumph without claiming any part in it. Slow, dragging steps warn of melancholy, when he mourns dead queens or lost battles, and you must be prepared to comfort without speaking, to soothe without questions. The other concubines become your teachers in the art of survival through submission. Eleanor, who's been here 3 years, shows you how to arrange pillows just so, how to anticipate whether he wants wine or ale, whether he prefers silence or gentle conversation. She's missing 2 fingers from a night when she guessed wrong about his preferences, though she never speaks of how she lost them. The scars tell their own story. Catherine teaches you the language of fear that governs palace life, which servants can be trusted with secrets, which nobles are allies, which courtiers report directly to the king's spies. Everyone watches everyone else in this golden cage, searching for weakness, for mistakes, for opportunities to advance themselves by destroying others. Trust is a luxury none of you can afford. The rules are never written down, but they govern every moment of your existence. You must be available whenever summoned, regardless of illness, exhaustion, or personal needs. You must appear grateful for his attention while never presuming to expect it. You must be entertaining but not attention-seeking, beautiful but not vain, intelligent but not opinionated. The contradictions are designed to keep you off balance, constantly anxious about whether you're performing correctly. Punishment arrives without warning, and often without clear reason. Marie disappears for a week after laughing too loudly at a joke. When she returns, her eyes are hollow, and she speaks in whispers, flinching whenever doors open suddenly. Isabella is sent away for mentioning her homesickness during dinner, never to be seen again. Her belongings are removed overnight, as if she never existed. The competition among you is deliberately fostered. You're rated against each other in beauty, charm, creativity, submission. Rankings are posted monthly, determining who receives better chambers, finer clothing, more prestigious invitations. Those at the bottom face exile or worse, creating constant tension that prevents friendship or solidarity. Spies are embedded among you, girls who seem sympathetic but report every conversation to the king's intelligence network. You learn to speak in code, to communicate through glances and gestures, to share comfort without revealing vulnerability. Even in your sleep, you're watched, and dreams must be carefully edited before sharing them aloud. The king's preferences change without notice or explanation. One month he favors redheads, and you watch blonde concubines desperately dye their hair with henna and saffron. The next month he develops fascination with pale complexions, sending olive-skinned girls into panic as they apply dangerous bleaching compounds. Following these shifting desires becomes a deadly game where the rules change constantly, but the penalties for losing remain severe. Religious instruction becomes another form of control. You attend daily services where priests preach about feminine virtue, obedience, and the sacred duty of submission to male authority. Your spiritual life is reshaped to support your physical captivity, with God himself invoked as the ultimate justification for your degradation. And then came the bedchamber, where the true horror began. The ritual begins hours before sunset in chambers that smell of jasmine and barely contain terror. You stand in a circular marble bath while servants pour water heated over fires scented with imported sandalwood. They scrub your skin with sea salt until it's raw and tingling, then apply oils that make you glisten like polished bronze in the candlelight. Your hair is washed with egg whites and honey, braided with pearls that catch the flickering flames, arranged to frame your face in precisely calculated ways. The preparation is choreographed like a religious ceremony, each step performed with solemn dedication. Servants paint your lips with berry stains, Darken your lashes with kohl from Egypt. Dust your shoulders with ground mother of pearl that makes your skin luminous. You are being transformed into a living jewel, a breathing ornament crafted for one man's pleasure. But this isn't about desire. It's about performance under the most intimate scrutiny imaginable. The silk nightgown they dress you in costs more than most families earn in a lifetime, yet it's designed to be easily removed, with ties that can be undone with trembling fingers. The fabric whispers against your skin as you walk, each step a reminder of your vulnerability, your purpose, your complete lack of control over what happens next. Catherine prepares you with whispered advice that makes your blood turn cold. Some kings keep detailed records, she explains, noting which girls please them and how. Your performance will be evaluated not just in the moment, but in written reports that determine your future standing at court. Failure means exile, disgrace, or worse. Excellence might buy you temporary security, though nothing is ever guaranteed. The bedchamber itself is a theater of opulence designed to intimidate. Tapestries depicting mythological seductions line the walls. Mirrors positioned at strategic angles reflect your image back from multiple directions, ensuring no angle of your performance goes unobserved. Candles burn from silver sconces, casting dancing shadows that make the room feel alive with watching spirits. You wait in poses you've practiced for months, each position designed to display your body's most attractive features while conveying perfect submission. Your hands must be placed just so, your head tilted at precisely the right angle, your expression radiating eager devotion while concealing the terror crawling up your throat like bile. When the king arrives, you perform a choreographed greeting that took weeks to master. Your curtsy must be deep enough to show respect, but brief enough not to bore him. Your smile must appear genuine while your eyes remain downcast unless specifically instructed otherwise. Every gesture has been rehearsed, every response anticipated and practiced until it becomes automatic. The evening unfolds like a play, where only he knows the script. You must respond to his moods, his preferences, his unspoken desires with supernatural intuition. Too eager, and you're dismissed as common. Too hesitant, and you're criticized as frigid. The balance is impossibly precise, and the consequences of miscalculation are severe. Some nights he wants conversation, testing your knowledge of poetry or philosophy, while you balance intellectual display with feminine modesty. Other evenings he prefers silence, using your body like a beautiful object while you perform responsive pleasure you may not feel. Your genuine emotions become irrelevant, only the performance matters. The most disturbing aspect is the documentation. Court physicians sometimes examine you afterward, noting your physical responses, your apparent enthusiasm, your suitability for continued royal attention. These clinical evaluations reduce your most intimate experiences to data points in ledgers that survive in royal archives long after your name is forgotten. Mourning brings different horrors. You must appear grateful for his attention, while showing no presumption about future encounters. Your demeanor should suggest that serving him was the greatest honor imaginable, while acknowledging that such privileges are temporary and completely dependent on his continued favor. But your worth wasn't measured by beauty or charm. It was measured by your womb. The moment your monthly bleeding stops, you become the most dangerous woman in the palace. You wake to find servants watching your every move with predatory intensity. They examine your complexion for the telltale glow, observe your eating habits for signs of morning sickness, monitor your sleep patterns for changes that might indicate conception. Pregnancy transforms you from ornament into political weapon, your womb potentially carrying the future of kingdoms. The court physicians arrive within days, conducting examinations that strip away any remaining privacy or dignity. They palpate your belly, study your urine, consult astrological charts to determine the optimal timing for announcing royal bastards. Your body becomes state property in ways you never imagined possible, every change documented and analyzed for its political implications. If you carry a son, you might ascend to unprecedented power. Royal bastards have inherited thrones, founded dynasties, altered the course of European history. The boy growing in your belly could become the next king if legitimate heirs die young or prove incompetent. Your status shifts overnight from disposable concubine to potential mother of rulers. But if you give birth to a daughter, your value plummets like stone through water. Girls cannot inherit crowns in most kingdoms, cannot carry forward royal bloodlines, cannot secure dynasties against extinction. You watch other concubines who produce daughters get quietly transferred to distant convents or arranged marriages with minor nobles. Their usefulness expired. The worst fate awaits those who remain barren. Month after month of failed conception marks you as defective, cursed, possibly practicing witchcraft to prevent pregnancy. Whispers follow you through corridors about herbs you might be secretly consuming, spells you might be casting, sins that have rendered your womb inhospitable to royal seed. Agnes was accused of consorting with demons when she failed to conceive after 2 years. The king's confessor convinced him that her barrenness was divine punishment for some hidden transgression. She was subjected to exorcism rituals that left her broken in mind and body, then banished to a remote monastery where she died within months. Her beauty destroyed by religious zealots convinced she harbored evil spirits. Even successful pregnancy brings new terrors. You must carry the child to term while navigating increased political intrigue. Rival concubines might attempt to cause miscarriage through poison or violence, seeing your condition as threatening their own security. Legitimate queens view pregnant concubines as direct challenges to their children's inheritance rights, making you targets for sophisticated assassination attempts. The birthing chamber becomes a battlefield where your life hangs by threads thinner than silk. Medieval obstetrics kill more mothers than they save, and royal physicians care more about preserving potential heirs than protecting concubine mothers. You labor surrounded by men who view you as an interesting vessel rather than a human being in mortal danger. If you survive childbirth but the infant dies, you face accusations of infanticide, negligence, or supernatural malevolence. Some concubines were burned as witches after stillbirths, their grief transformed into evidence of demonic influence. Others were simply discarded like broken vessels, their reproductive failure marking them as worthless. Living children create different complications. Royal bastards must be acknowledged, educated, and positioned within complex succession hierarchies. Your influence over your child becomes another form of political currency, carefully monitored and controlled by court officials who understand that maternal bonds can be weaponized against kings. You watch your son or daughter grow up, knowing they can never be entirely yours. They are royal property, their education and marriage prospects determined by political necessity rather than parental affection. Some concubine mothers are separated from their children entirely, deemed too lowborn or potentially treasonous to maintain influence over royal blood. But even giving birth to healthy heirs didn't guarantee safety. In palaces where power shifts like quicksand, today's triumph becomes tomorrow's liability, and successful concubines often face the deadliest enemies of all. The poison arrives in a goblet of wine that tastes of honey and bitter almonds. You're sharing evening refreshments with Marie and Catherine, in chambers that echo with forced laughter and carefully guarded secrets. The wine is a gift from Isabel, the newest arrival who's been winning too much royal attention lately. She claims it's a peace offering, a gesture of sisterhood among women trapped in the same golden cage. But as you lift the cup to your lips, Marie's hand shoots out to stop you. She's seen this before, the slight tremor in Isabel's fingers when she poured, the way she avoided meeting your eyes, the particular shade of foam that appears when certain herbs dissolve in alcohol. Marie saves your life with that gesture, though you both know the reprieve is temporary. In a world where women's survival depends on men's changeable desires, eliminating competition becomes a matter of life and death. The rivalries are systematically encouraged by a court structure that turns women against each other. Monthly rankings posted in common areas list you by beauty, charm, fertility, and royal favor. Those at the bottom face exile or worse, creating desperate competition where friendship becomes luxury none of you can afford. The king's preferences shift without warning, making today's favorite tomorrow's target. Catherine tells you about Elena, who held first position for 8 months until a newer girl arrived from Venice. Elena's response was methodical and horrifying. She befriended the newcomer, learned her fears and weaknesses, then whispered accusations of heresy to court chaplains. Within weeks, the Venetian girl was hauled before inquisitors, tortured into confessing imaginary sins, and burned in the palace courtyard while Elena watched from her window, expressionless as winter stone. The weapons women use against each other are subtle but devastatingly effective. Isabel spreads rumors about your family's hidden Jewish ancestry. Knowing religious suspicion can destroy reputations overnight. Marie plants love letters from fictitious admirers in rivals' chambers, then ensures guards discover them during routine searches. The penalty for adultery, even imaginary adultery, is death. Some attacks target fertility directly. Certain herbs, when added to food over time, can prevent conception without obvious symptoms. Women who fail to produce heirs after reasonable periods face exile or worse, making reproductive sabotage an especially cruel form of warfare. You learn to prepare your own meals, test your wine with silver, sleep with doors barricaded against midnight visitors bearing gifts. The psychological warfare proves even more destructive than physical threats. Constant surveillance creates paranoia that eats away at sanity. You begin questioning every interaction, analyzing every smile for hidden malice, searching every gesture for signs of betrayal. Sleep becomes elusive when you know enemies might strike during vulnerable moments. Intelligence networks develop organically among competing factions. Some women ally with specific nobles or court officials, trading sexual favors for protection and information. Others cultivate relationships with servants who overhear private conversations or observe suspicious activities. Knowledge becomes currency, and secrets are traded like precious gems in a market where information means survival. The king often orchestrates conflicts deliberately, finding entertainment in watching beautiful women destroy each other for his amusement. He might praise one concubine's poetry while criticizing another's musical skills, knowing such comparisons will breed resentment and competition. Royal favor becomes a double-edged sword that elevates you while painting targets on your back. Some rivalries span years, developing into elaborate campaigns of mutual destruction. Women who initially entered the palace as friends become bitter enemies, each plotting the other's downfall with strategic patience. They study each other's weaknesses, wait for opportune moments, strike with precision that would impress military commanders. The most successful survivors learn to navigate these deadly currents through calculated alliance building and strategic invisibility. You become skilled at appearing supportive while remaining neutral, offering comfort without revealing vulnerability, maintaining enough prominence to avoid suspicion while avoiding enough attention to escape targeting. When political tides shift against entire factions, the consequences become catastrophic. New kings often purge previous rulers' concubines to eliminate potential threats and make room for fresh favorites. Mass executions disguised as moral reforms clear out entire harems overnight, sending dozens of women to graves or convents. And if politics turned against you, complete erasure awaited. They come for you at dawn, when the palace sleeps and witnesses are few. No accusations are made, no trials conducted, no explanations offered. You simply cease to exist in any official capacity. Servants enter your chambers while you sleep, gathering belongings with mechanical efficiency. Your silk gowns, jeweled ornaments, perfumed oils disappear into baskets that will be redistributed among remaining concubines. Within hours, no physical evidence remains of your 3 years serving the crown. Your name is scraped from palace records with the same thoroughness used to remove unflattering murals. Court scribes work by candlelight, editing ledgers and correspondence until your presence becomes historical fiction. Guest lists are altered, financial accounts adjusted, even casual mentions in official diaries carefully expunged. Future scholars will find no trace of your existence among royal archives. The erasure extends beyond documentation to human memory itself. Surviving concubines are instructed to forget you ever existed, and those who mention your name face immediate punishment. Guards who once protected you suddenly cannot recall your face. Servants who dressed your hair claim never to have seen you before. The collective amnesia is so complete it seems supernatural, as if you've been edited out of reality itself. Some women are disposed of through strategic marriages to minor nobles desperate for royal connections. You become a political gift, packaged with modest dowries and vague promises of continued court favor. These arranged unions typically exile you to remote estates where your dangerous knowledge of palace secrets cannot threaten new regimes. Your beauty, once your greatest asset, becomes liability that must be hidden away from public view. The convent represents another form of living death. You're delivered to religious establishments with sufficient donations to ensure strict adherence to vows of silence. Your worldly identity dies ceremonially as you take religious names and habits that erase every trace of your former self. Some women find genuine solace in spiritual life, but others waste away behind stone walls, their beauty fading as they perform endless penance for sins they never committed. More permanent solutions await those deemed genuinely dangerous. Women who witnessed treasonous conversations, who bore bastard children with legitimate claims to thrones, who possessed compromising information about royal weaknesses, simply vanish without explanation. Their disappearances are attributed to illness, accidents, or voluntary departures that fool no one but cannot be challenged. Marie tells you about Clara, who made the fatal mistake of keeping a diary detailing her intimate encounters with the previous king. When new rulers discovered her detailed accounts of royal preferences, sexual habits, and private confessions, she was quietly removed one winter night. Searchers found her body months later in a forest, though wild animals had obscured the true cause of death. The psychological impact of witnessing these erasures proves as devastating as the physical threats. You watch women disappear overnight, their existence scrubbed so thoroughly that questioning their fate becomes dangerous in itself. The message is clear: complete compliance or complete disappearance, with no middle ground for negotiation. Documentation of disposal methods reveals the bureaucratic precision applied to human destruction. Palace administrators maintain careful records of which convents receive which women, which noble families accept which arranged marriages, which graves hold which inconvenient witnesses. The paperwork of erasure is meticulously preserved even as the people themselves are systematically forgotten. Some women attempt escape before official disposal, but freedom proves nearly impossible to achieve. You possess no legal identity outside royal service, no family connections willing to risk royal displeasure, no resources or skills applicable to independent survival. The few who successfully flee often face recapture and punishment that makes their original captivity seem merciful by comparison. The cruelest disposal involves psychological destruction while maintaining physical presence. Certain women are deliberately driven insane through isolation, gaslighting, and systematic abuse, until they become living examples of what happens to those who displease royal authority. Their madness serves as warning to others while eliminating their credibility as potential witnesses. Children born to disposed concubines face similar erasure unless their royal paternity proves politically useful. Bastard offspring might be quietly eliminated, sold into slavery, or raised by adoptive families sworn to secrecy about their true origins. Royal blood becomes a death sentence rather than a blessing when carried in the wrong vessels. But in rare cases, some concubines manage to claw their way to real power, transforming from victims into victors in ways that shocked medieval Europe. Diane de Poitiers enters your story like a goddess descended from Olympus, walking through the palace of Fontainebleau with authority that makes hardened courtiers step aside. She's 51 years old, an age when most women are considered ancient, yet King Henry II of France worships her with devotion that surpasses religious fervor. Her secret isn't supernatural, though whispers attribute her influence to witchcraft. Its intelligence so sharp it cuts through centuries of masculine assumptions about feminine capabilities. Combined with strategic brilliance that would impress Machiavelli himself, you watch her during court ceremonies, noting how she controls entire rooms without raising her voice. Nobles who ignore other women hang on her every word. Foreign ambassadors seek her opinions on treaties and trade agreements. Even the Queen, Catherine de' Medici, defers to her judgment on matters of state, despite officially outranking her in every way that supposedly matters. Diane's power wasn't granted by accident or blind luck. She cultivated it systematically over decades, beginning as a young widow who refused to remarry, and instead focused on accumulating influence through other means. She studied languages, philosophy, mathematics, military strategy, and economics, while other noble women learned embroidery and poetry. When Henry fell under her spell at age 12 while she was 29, she was already prepared to wield the influence that would follow. But power extracted this price. She became something unprecedented and dangerous in medieval society, a woman who controlled men rather than being controlled by them. The psychological cost was enormous. She could never relax, never trust completely, never show weakness or uncertainty. Every conversation became a chess match, every relationship a potential source of intelligence or threat. Agnes Sorel represents another variation of concubine power, though her influence operated through different mechanisms. As mistress to Charles VII of France, she transformed herself from simple merchant's daughter into the power behind France's military recovery during the 100 Years' War. She convinced the king to reclaim territories lost to English occupation, personally funding military campaigns with her own resources while providing strategic advice that proved devastatingly effective. Agnes's rise required sacrificing everything recognizable about her original identity. She learned to speak multiple languages, studied military tactics, developed sophisticated understanding of international politics, and cultivated relationships with generals, merchants, and diplomats across Europe. Her beauty opened doors, but her intellect kept them open and allowed her to walk through them into rooms where women had never been welcomed. The paradox of concubine power reveals itself in these extraordinary examples. Women who achieved unprecedented influence by accepting complete dependence on male approval. Their authority remained entirely conditional, subject to cancellation whenever royal affections shifted. They wielded tremendous power while maintaining absolute vulnerability, a psychological contradiction that drove some to madness and others to remarkable achievements. These powerful mistresses developed networks that functioned like shadow governments. They placed loyal supporters in key positions, gathered intelligence from multiple sources, and operated parallel diplomatic channels that sometimes proved more effective than official state machinery. Their influence extended far beyond bedchambers into treasury management, military planning, foreign policy, and religious affairs. But their success required constant vigilance against rivals, political enemies, and the inevitable aging that would eventually diminish their physical appeal. They invested heavily in younger protégés, built institutional power bases, and accumulated wealth that might provide security when royal favor inevitably faded. Even the most successful lived in constant awareness that their extraordinary positions remained fundamentally precarious. The documentation of their achievements often disappeared, along with the women themselves, since acknowledging female political influence threatened masculine authority structures. Modern historians have only recently begun recovering evidence of their impact on European development, finding references to their activities scattered through diplomatic correspondence, financial records, and private letters that survived official censorship. Their stories inspire and horrify simultaneously. Women who achieved remarkable power through complete submission to systems designed to destroy them. They succeeded by becoming perfect players in deadly games whose rules were written by their enemies, transforming victimization into victory through combinations of intelligence, ruthlessness, and strategic sexuality that challenged everything medieval society believed about feminine capabilities. But even the most powerful couldn't escape the final truth about concubinage in medieval Europe. You stand once more in that marble chamber where this story began, but now you see it with different eyes. The silk tapestries that once seemed beautiful reveal themselves as prison walls decorated to disguise their function. The jeweled goblets that sparkled like captured starlight now appear as gilded shackles designed to make bondage seem like privilege. The sweet perfumes that filled the air cannot mask the underlying scent of fear, exploitation, and systematic human destruction that permeated every corner of these golden cages. What was considered normal in medieval Europe would horrify modern observers. Yet the women who survived these systems were not passive victims waiting for rescue. They adapted, fought, manipulated, and transformed their circumstances through intelligence, courage, and strategic brilliance that challenges every assumption about feminine powerlessness in patriarchal societies. The myth of the glamorous royal mistress, perpetuated by romantic literature and Hollywood fantasies, obscures the brutal reality of systematic exploitation disguised as privilege. These women weren't living fairy tales of upward mobility through sexual appeal. They were surviving psychological warfare, physical abuse, and constant threats of erasure, while maintaining performances so convincing that even modern historians sometimes mistake their strategic compliance for genuine contentment. The normalization of horror worked through careful linguistic manipulation that transformed exploitation into honor, captivity into opportunity, and rape into romance. Medieval chroniclers described concubinage using language of courtly love and religious devotion, creating narrative frameworks that made systematic abuse appear noble and even desirable. This linguistic camouflage was so effective that its echoes still influence how we discuss historical gender relations today. Consider the psychological mechanisms required to survive in these conditions. These women developed skills that would impress modern intelligence operatives, reading micro-expressions to predict violent outbursts, maintaining multiple false identities, building covert alliance networks, gathering and trading sensitive information, and performing complex deceptions under constant surveillance. Their survival required becoming consummate actresses, diplomats, and strategists, while appearing to be nothing more than beautiful ornaments. The institutional structures supporting concubinage reveal how entire societies can collaborate in systematizing abuse while maintaining moral legitimacy. Palace administrators, court physicians, religious authorities, noble families, and educated elites all participated in systems they knew caused immense suffering, yet justified their involvement through cultural traditions, economic necessity, and religious doctrine that portrayed feminine submission as divinely ordained. Most tragically, success within these systems required internalizing the very beliefs that justified their oppression. Survivors had to convince themselves that their treatment was normal, their suffering was voluntary, and their lack of alternatives was evidence of their own inadequacy rather than systemic cruelty. This psychological adaptation was necessary for mental survival but created trauma that extended far beyond individual lives into generational patterns of accepted abuse. The erasure of these women's stories from historical records was deliberate and comprehensive, designed to prevent future generations from learning about systematic exploitation of women by powerful men. Official histories focused on political achievements and military conquests, while carefully editing out the human costs of maintaining royal power through sexual exploitation and systematic abuse of vulnerable young women. Yet these women's resilience offers lessons that transcend historical periods. They found ways to protect each other within hostile systems, developed covert networks of mutual support, preserved their humanity despite dehumanizing treatment, and occasionally achieved remarkable influence through strategic intelligence rather than passive compliance. Their stories remind us that survival itself can be a form of resistance, and that human dignity persists even under conditions designed to destroy it. In medieval Europe, concubinage wasn't romance disguised as politics. It was survival inside a velvet coffin, where beauty became currency, silence became strategy, and the price of protection was the systematic erasure of everything that made you human. These women paid that price not because they were weak, but because the alternative was death, and they chose to live on whatever terms were available, transforming their captivity into the only form of power their world would permit them to possess. If you enjoyed this story, you'll also like the story of the most inbred man in European history. Watch it next.